Welcome to Trap TV and Soul Culture Productions, TTSCP. In the midst of me trying to put the culture on, expose certain things that are going on in the culture that I feel like we need to know, it's some shit that is not cool, it's not entertaining, it's not fun to learn about, but it's really happening out here in real life. We need to be aware of what's going on in the culture. 215 unmarked bodies were found behind a jail in Mississippi. 215.
An unsettling situation in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi to be exact. It's been revealed 215 bodies were buried in unmarked graves behind a state jail in Jackson, of course. Attorney Ben Crump is now calling for an investigation. Families of the dead reportedly had no idea until last month. Some of them, those grave sites were only labeled by a number and a metal rod. Joining us to talk about it, activist Arthur Silky Slim Reed, who also works with Ben Crump.
So, Arthur, this started with Dexter Wade's case back in March, right? He was an individual who was hit by a police officer, and his family thought he was simply missing, but he was dead and buried, and no one notified them.
Well, the thing about it is that he had identification on him, Isaiah, and the medical examiner gave it to the lead detective who said he called, didn't get an answer, and they didn't worry about doing anything else. What we're finding, Isaiah, is that Mississippi is Mississippi. It's an ugly Mississippi. And this is sad because now we have 6 other individuals that has been put into the same grave. And if you look at the video from when we first went to that site, buzzards were flying overhead. And we were trying to figure out, why are the buzzards flying overhead? But it's because they're putting them in shadow graves, and the only thing that they're putting them in is a body bag without embalming the bodies. So the stench from the bodies are drawing buzzards there. It's so inhumane for anybody to do anyone like that, Isaiah, is just horrible is what we can say. And that's not even a word that we should use in a situation like this. It's something that we haven't seen.
And what we're seeing here is over 200 people in this, what they consider a pauper's grave behind the county jail there. And what you guys are learning in your investigation is many of these families were never called, were never notified. Many of them still think their family members or thought their family members were simply missing, but they were dead and buried and never got a call from any investigators, any law enforcement officials or authorities in Jackson, Mississippi.
That's right. And one of the things that we faced being Mississippi is that they thought that we were playing the race card. We have white clients as well. There were white people that were buried the same way, Isaiah. And any human being that's buried the way that they're burying these individuals, it says a lot about the people that's doing this criminal act. And the only thing that we're asking, because people always look at us when we're out fighting for civil rights of individuals, the only thing that we're asking in this case, we want you to do the right thing and give them a humane burial. And the city is, so it's crazy, Isaiah, to see something like that. It's 2023. It's not 1940. But to see them just dumping bodies in a grave like that, and no name, just a number. So they'll say, well, number 13, that's Arthur Reed. Number 21 is Isaiah Carey. But we don't really know until we get the remains. And then the remains had decomposed so bad, we just have to take them at their word. And when you look at the story, they told us that they would exhume this body at 12 noon, but they ended up taking this young man, Dexter Wade, out of the ground at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. They say, we were not going to allow them to embarrass us with those cameras. If you're not embarrassed by what you're doing, it's shame on you.
Absolutely incredible. Now, you guys, along with Ben Crump and I think Attorney Dennis Week, you all are asking for a federal investigation, that the feds come in and take a look at this and see exactly what's going on, because there's some questions as to Dexter Wade's death when he was hit by the police officer. Whatever happened with the officer in this case? And why wasn't his family ever notified that he was dead and not just a missing person? So bottom line, you want an investigation, right?
We think many civil rights were violated in Dexter Wade's case, not notifying the family, burying him without permission when you knew who he was. That's the key issue right there. You knew who this individual was. And if you look at the Dexter Wade case, it's sad, but Dexter Wade's uncle was killed by Jackson police, and they knew the family because they was involved in an ongoing lawsuit with that family, with Attorney Sweets, who you're talking about. So this is very, very, very troubling for us for you to know this family already, and for you to do something like this. This was adding insult to already injury that you had done to this family, Isaiah.
Investigation by a CNN affiliate has revealed Jackson, Mississippi's police department did not publicly disclose the names of dozens of homicide victims this year. We recently told you about Dexter Wade, a man in Mississippi who was hit and killed by a Jackson Police Department vehicle and buried without his family's knowledge. Wade's mother told me about when police finally contacted her about her son months later.
Well, when they first called me and said, we found Dexter, I said, oh, Lord, let him be okay. So I said, where he at or what's, going on with him? She said, well, I'll let Officer Gerard come out there and talk to you. And right then, when she said that, it's just, my heart dropped because I knew, I just knew that he was deceased.
New reporting by CNN affiliate WLBT has now revealed a similar case. 40-year-old Mario Moore was killed in February, buried in the same pauper's field where Dexter Wade was buried. Moore's family did not find out about his death until October, after seeing his name in WLBT's reporting on more than 20 homicide victims that Jackson police did not disclose to the public. Joining me now is the investigative reporter who brought this to light, CJ LeMaster, with CNN's affiliate there in Jackson. CJ, good to see you. This is, I want to say unbelievable, but not. It is heartbreaking. Tell us this story, because unlike Dexter Wade, who was killed by an off-duty officer, this man, Mr. Moore, was found dead and then reported to police. What's his story?
So what happened here is a situation where he was killed by blunt force trauma. That's what we know. He was found wrapped in a tarp on a street in the western part of the city. And at that point, police claimed they did not there were conflicting reports as to whether there was even ID found on him. But suffice it to say, it took some time for them to identify him. But at that point, all we know from the captain who was in charge of detectives for the department, he told us in an interview that essentially they sent a detective to a home that they found in connection with Moore. They left a card, and that was it. There was no follow-up. We pressed the captain for this in one of our interviews, and he didn't really have any explanation. He said, well, that is sufficient. Now, we know now that since all this had happened, since NBC and other national news agencies have picked up the story as well, that now the city of Jackson, the police department, for the first time has a death notifications policy, a 6-page policy. So that came out of this, but it took the family not finding out about this until October for any of this to happen and for the ball to be rolling. And I got to tell you, Victor, this is something. It was one thing for us to find out that there were 24 individual victims, 22 cases that the public, that we had not been told about. But to find out that one of those was a situation where the family wasn't told either, it like you said, it's heartbreaking. You can't fathom that.
Yeah. Let's listen to Mario Moore's sister, Marquita, here on what she expected from police.
How many times do you come back to notify the family if you did come here? Did you come back the next day? Did you try to follow up on your reports?
And so what is the department doing now? These 24 individual victims, we now know that Moore's family has been notified. Are they trying again to reach out to the next of kin of these people?
So at this point, we don't know. In fact, the department has, as you might imagine, been fairly tight-lipped since these investigations have come forward, since these two cases in particular have garnered such national attention. The department only speaking through a city spokesperson at this point. But it seems, at least going forward, that this will be happening. But even when I tried to get information about these 24 victims, so we could even put that out there to try and help detectives, because you would think that detectives would need that information to the public so they could garner leads, they could look forward to developments in the case. We got very little. I'm saying maybe a paragraph's worth of information. And so that's part of the problem here. We talked to the captain about this, Captain Abraham Thompson, who, by the way, after our story came out, I think a day later, he was shifted. He's no longer over detectives in the department. He's not over a single certified officer. But he told us, he said, well, I'm not even really that frustrated that information didn't get out, because we don't want to put a time frame on solving these cases. And that sort of flies in the face of what you're familiar with, I'm sure. People, the first 48 hours are the most crucial when it comes to investigating homicides.
Yeah. And what more is Jackson saying about this specific case and what they are planning to do as they move forward? You say this new 6-page protocol.
So this new 6-page protocol, we actually just got a copy of it not long ago. I want to say it was a day or so ago that we finally got a copy of it through a records request. And essentially, it puts Jackson in line with other agencies, with other cities, frankly, smaller than Jackson, that requires every effort to be made to be able to contact these individuals when something happens. Keep in mind that the city actually has blamed this on a miscommunication, on a failure of communication, if you will, but recently has shifted that to blaming the coroner's office, because according to statute, the coroner's office does have responsibilities in notifying the family. And so what we saw with the Dexter Wade case, what we're seeing now with the Mario Moore case, is that there's this shifting of blame to the coroner's office. The coroner's office, as you might imagine, not returning our calls, not saying anything publicly about this. We may see more details when it, I would assume, becomes litigated at some point. Obviously, Ben Crump has been retained by both families here, and so hopefully we'll learn some answers through that. But it's certainly been incredibly frustrating to not really know and have any accountability in something like this.
All right, CJ LeMaster with WLBT. Thank you so much for your time this morning and for your work on this story.